All expressions and variables have an associated type, which means the kind of thing that it is. So for example, 33 is a number. 11.2 is also a number, but more specifically, 33 is an integer. It's a number that doesn't have any decimal places, whereas 11.2 is a real number. It does have decimal places. Every language has names for these types of things. In addition to numbers, languages usually have types for characters, which usually have some kind of quotation mark around them. So for example, the character X is denoted with some kind of quotes. And you can also have strings of characters, which store things like words, and they also have some kind of quotation marks around them. So for example, the string of characters hello. Sometimes in a language, the same quotation marks are used for individual characters and for strings of characters, and sometimes different kinds of quotation marks are used. So for example, single quotes for a single character or double quotes for strings of characters. But quotes are needed to distinguish the character X from a variable called X. So that's very important. If you want to refer to a character X, you have to have some kind of quotes around it, because without that, if you just have X, that would be interpreted as a variable named X. Most languages also have some type to store true-false values. So for example, the expression 3 less than 5. 3 less than 5, that's true. So that kind of expression is generally called either a logical expression or a relational expression or a Boolean expression. So there are different ways that variables can get their type. With some languages, you have to declare the variable before you can use it. Declaring the variable generally gives the name of the variable, the type of the variable, and what it does is it sets aside enough memory to store a value of that type. So for example, we might say that the variable num is going to be an integer variable. So that declares the variable called num to be an integer variable, which means now it can only store an integer value. Some languages don't require that variables be declared before they're used. You can just use them, and in that case the variable is typed based on the value that's stored in them. So for example, if I say in an assignment statement num gets the value of 22.5, then that's going to create a real number variable called num, since I'm storing a real number, a number with a decimal point in it. So this doesn't explicitly declare the variable, but by putting a real number in the variable, it makes that variable a real number variable. Typecasting, or sometimes just called casting, converts a variable or an expression from one type to another. So for example, if we start by declaring num to be an integer variable, so we say num is going to be an integer variable, and then we use an assignment statement to store in num the value of 3, we could then typecast the variable num to be a real number type instead of an integer. So essentially what that would do is that would make the number stored in it 3.0 instead of just 3.